Welcome, familia. This is your host, Ray Collazo, and you're watching or listening to the Found in Translation talk show, the talk show that stacks truth about politics and today's hottest issues. Thank you so much for joining us again. You're watching and listening to the Found in Translation talk show, the talk show that stacks truth. I'm talking about for real, on politics, today's hottest issues, news. And in a case like today, what's really kind of catching the spirit and is the buzz of our community, and really a conversation not only about, in this case, a Netflix show. We're going to take a deep dive into Gentefied today, my friends. I know you're excited, but really it spurs on so many conversations about family, identity, politics, romance in 2020, and so much more. And I'm so happy to have a new friend to the show, but someone I think you're going to see a lot on Found in Translation, of activist and entrepreneur, Sulaih Picorelli. Sulaih, welcome to Found in Translation.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much, Ray, for this great opportunity, this invitation.
Well, I appreciate you, Sulaih. Why don't you let people know? Oh, first of all, before I let Sulaih introduce yourself, introduce yourself to the family. Let people know where you're coming from, anything you'd like to share as one of the new co-hosts here on Found in Translation.
Sure thing. So my name's Sulaih Picorelli. I'm a Philadelphia transplant. I grew up in Wisconsin, but I'm so very proud to have grown up, like I like to say, here in Philadelphia, because it's given me an opportunity to really advocate for my Latino community here in Philly. My kids go to school in Philly. My husband and I have a home in Philly, so this is home for us. So it's really exciting to be just out there in the community and really advocating for people.
Well, Sulaih, we're definitely going to lean on you for sort of planning our presence. Well, who knows now? Maybe nobody's ever going to leave their house for another year, but at the DNC, which will be in Milwaukee this year, your old stomping ground. So,
yeah,
I was out there a few months ago, kind of seeing the lay of the land. So we're gonna have time to have many of those conversations again. Hopefully, we'll all be able to leave our houses at that point. Sulaih Picorelli, thank you so much for joining the show again. We're really excited because we're going to introduce one of our very special guests who's really going to give us the real West Coast perspective on sort of the Gentefied phenomenon. But why don't you share with people a description of what Gentefied is all about before we get into the show?
Sure thing. So I'm a couple of episodes in, guys. It's a great, exciting show. Gentefied is about, family and community coming together to just save a business that doesn't just belong to the family, but also to the community. And we see that so much here in Philadelphia. So to be able to see these characters come together as a family, it's just really neat to watch. And I'm really excited for tonight's conversation.
Yes, I wanted to read sort of the official trailer for this Netflix phenomenon, which is being executive produced by America Ferrera. Of course, everyone knows America Ferrera from Ugly Betty and her storied career in Hollywood. But Gentefied is a bilingual dramedy about family, community, brown love, and the displacement that disrupts us all. Gentefied follows three Mexican-American cousins and their struggle to chase the American dream, even while those dreams threaten their neighborhood, which is sort of an ongoing theme here in this conversation. Their abuelo Casimiro and their family taqueria. Before we introduce our guest, I want our very special guest, Sulaih, to the program is going to give us kind of the West Coast perspective on the Gentefied phenomenon. I again want to remind people, I want to thank them for watching the live Facebook show. You're watching this either on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, live, and also download it as a YouTube show. And for my Ride or Dies, my podcast heads, you're listening to this as a podcast. Anywhere you can download a podcast. And of course, as a regular radio program at WPPMOP 106.5 FM in Philadelphia, the executive producer of the radio show, Vanessa Maria Graber. Sulaih, before we introduce our guest, talk about Gentefied, just quick on what's impacting all of our lives, the coronavirus. And I know as a mother, as a businesswoman, you're concerned about this whole situation on a whole lot of levels.
It's been really something to watch from within here, from home, because I have been practicing social distancing. This is serious. We saw it first in other, parts of the world, but now it's touching our community. It's getting close.
Yes, and not to get in your business, but we were just talking before off air, like
that's right.
Schools are up in the air.
That's right.
Working from home. Right. How are people going to deal with, some of us are privileged enough to be able to work from home, maybe, but a lot of
Uh-huh.
us aren't. So this is bringing up a lot of the social issues, whether it's healthcare, sort of worker rights issues that
We've got schools closing tomorrow.
yeah. So there's a lot going on here. So for all of our folks, so the good news is there's no NBA, no hockey, no March Madness, y'all. No excuse not to be catching a little found in translation. Maida Arroyo is in the Maida. I DM'd you the link. Join us on the show, my friend. Talk about how you love this show. I love the perspective of you as a mother with your daughter. So Maida Arroyo, always a friend of the show. Let's bring on a very special guest who is very proud to say she has watched Gentefied more than I would admit personally. But anyway, so activist and West Coast gal through and through 100%. Alicia Lewis, welcome back to the show, my friend.
Hey
Hi,
there,
Lisa.
how are you? Hey guys. So yes, I've watched the series more times than I care to admit. But no, on my third round, because every time somebody else comes home, like, guess what we're watching? And
Exactly.
so except then I'm, telling them all the episodes before they happen. So I'm probably the worst person to watch it with at this point.
Exactly. So, Alicia, why don't we just start with you? I mean, Gentefied. There's people that are addicted to it in our friendship network. Some people may have not seen it before, and I'm hoping, if anything, I want everyone, especially in our leaders in our friendship network, to check out the show if you didn't get a chance to watch it today or over the weekend, certainly. But Alicia, we broke down the basics. It's it really kind of breaks down for me kind of really what our families and a lot of our communities are sort of experiencing. So share with our audience why this show has really connected with you and so many of our friends out in the Found in Translation community.
I think for me, it was really just actually being able to tell somebody, if you want to see what it's like to be around my family, that's what it looks like and that's what it sounds like. From not only just the mix of Spanish and English to just the humor with each other, kind of the ragging on one another, but doing it in a way where you have like that generational like stages of how that happens. Just it was mind blowing to actually see that break out into, it looked like my grandma's house and it sounded like my cousins. It sounded like us arguing. And that is what I've been pitching it to friends who may not be Latino, who don't understand like my experience. I'm like, that is probably a digestible way for you to get a taste of it.
Yeah.
And the humor with it, the love with it, the warmth, all of that is I think really what was compelling. And watching my family, everybody as they join in and watching the episodes, cracking up and seeing what clicks for them, it's all there.
So
it's been fun.
It's so interesting you say that because I watched it first and then I got my wife to watch it this past weekend. And so it's so funny you say that because she always watches these things with a little different lens, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so the language piece and the grandfather piece was such the thing that really clicked with her. She said, that's how we grew up. Like the older relatives spoke Spanish, and we knew enough to understand them, but we would respond in English. And in kind, they knew enough to understand us. And so watching it as someone that grew up that way too, I sort of, if it makes sense, I kind of forgot. It's hard. I couldn't tell you if the show was 90% English, 50% Spanish, because it all sort of flowed in my head.
Mm-hmm.
And so, but I think this issue of it, and we're going to talk later in the show about the relationship romantic stuff, which is very interesting on a lot of levels. We'll talk a little bit more about the political identity stuff. I know, Alicia, you got a lot of thoughts on that part. And housing, surprise, big deal in our community. Right. But let's talk about this family piece, because I think this intergenerational, the fact that, we're sort of one way or another, we're in this together, even when it doesn't appear that way. So why did that piece resonate so strong with you?
I think we see often, I think with like modern families, people think, oh, you live with your parents and then you go off to college or you move away and build your own family. And knowing that's definitely not the experience, where it's almost like this like forced extraction to get us to branch off and move away. It's not something we typically do. And to have that layering of family kind of piled up on each other, where your cousins may not live that far away and they're coming in almost like they own the house too. And that was definitely my experience. I mean, I grew up around my great grandparents, and and we lived next door at my grandma's house. And so we were, there was no fence. There was no, you're at this grandma's house or visiting this one, it was just back and forth. They were both your home. Yeah. And I think to see that displayed finally on TV and the way that it was just seamless, I think is very much something that's relatable, because how often did you go over to your Thea's house and you sat on the counter and you ate her food and nobody thought none the wiser? She didn't treat you like you weren't her kid. That's and right. Also scolded you the same way as if you were her own. And so I think that dynamic is something that's so usually cut out, because I don't think people know that's like a very common experience. And it's a very, just a very woven and just to the natural. I don't even know if we sometimes think to talk about it. It just is.
You know, it's so funny you say that, because, and I grew up in one of these Puerto Rican households where, like, I have so many people in my life I refer to as cousins, and I really have to think about if I'm actually blood related to them or not. Or like, well, that's right, Martha's technically a third cousin or second removed, but that's family. And I grew up with my grandparents that way on my dad's side. They grew up like 3 blocks from us growing up. And you know, it was so funny because and I think the beauty of the show is it's really set up for multiple seasons, right? But like, there's so many more relatives we don't know about. And that was the other thing my wife took away from it. Like, where's these people's parents and how are they related? And
right.
Yeah. Like, she goes, I need more. Where's the second season? Because I need more information. So there is a lot of interwovenness. But then, you know, Casimiro, the grandfather, el abuelo, and his mother, his wife, even though she's not with us anymore, are really the base of the show. So this idea that culturally and increasingly in American culture, that's sort of dishonoring the elderly and sort of, you know, kind of that part of our culture sort of whittling away. The Latino communities really, even these young whippersnappers, are elevating that. I want to bring Sulaih Picorelli, our new host, into the conversation. Sulaih, what, as a mother, entrepreneur, family person, what grabbed you as you started watching Gentefied?
So one thing that I think about is you see this dynamic, this family, you know, the cousins coming in to the home, and, you know, just like we were just talking about. But now I think about my own experience as an adult, because I do realize that growing up, there were many homes where, you know, we visited the tia, or, you know, it's like you're just hugged and brought close together by a bunch of people who are just there for you every single day. Now, the experience for me is not so much having that much extended family around, because, you know, now we move away to follow our own dreams and not necessarily stay where the family is all, you know, concentrated. So it just brings me back to thinking about growing up and that experience of having so many people, you know, together, your uncles, your aunts, your cousins, your abuela. And sadly, you know, my kids are not having that same experience. So it's made me a little nostalgic.
Interesting.
Yeah.
You know, and the other part of it is that kind of, and it ties into the identity conversation, because I could see an outsider, someone who's not as familiar with our community and those dynamics, and frankly, not seeing these kind of diverse images of what really Latinos are about and our complexities and but that it's like, how are these people even know each other? You know, like in another world, these people don't even look like they would be friends or even have any connection with each other. How do they even communicate? But that's how we all are. You know, I got a brother that's a hip, and you guys, we've talked about a lot of shows. He's a hip hop artist, he's got tats. He physically has a very different personal style than I do, but we couldn't be closer. And you know, like, and we go on and on from my abuelas to the little ones, and so Alicia, I think the thing that really hit me, and I'm gonna admit, actually, I'm gonna ask you this question later, but I'll share later with that confession, is that it all is us, like the nerdy guy, the immigrants, the mariachi guy, the woke Latinx grad student. There's nothing incongruent with what we all know as our community. And so the sad thing is that so little people know that. And just simply just putting a mirror to our own lives and our own families was so powerful.
Yeah, I think one of the things that really stood out, the more times I watched it, was we always think about, I think when we're elevating about Latino families, we always think about the matriarch, right? We think about that central figure of like our grandmother, our mothers, and what they have done to build that home from the meals. And it's just very much that central person who we think has like defined the Latino family. And then to have the grandmother removed, you know, technically from the film and the show, and you're seeing now grandpa's having to now navigate this. What is this like for him? But yet the whole time she's actually still driving all their thoughts and feelings and motives there. So it's kind of this like way that even without her physical presence on the show, that matriarch like say into things is still driving the entire like bloodline of this family and everything about them and their values. And so I kind of like that. I'm like, see, you can never actually get rid of us. We are still going to manage to drive this. But I think that's a powerful message over the importance of in our families and what that like defines for everybody there.
Alicia, and isn't it remarkable how accepting this family is? And I don't know if it's been your experience, but I've seen so many Latino families who, you know, historically have not been so accepting. So to see people and families evolve and move toward that positive change, it's really great. It's really amazing.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that was definitely a balancing act, right? I mean, we still like whether we get to traditional roles or whatever on how the women are defined, it was just that grandmother's presence on, you know, whenever you talk with folks, and when I talk with my dad about his grandmother, it's still just kind of like this very nostalgic, like how I view what she meant to me. And I think we've progressed and gotten better on like the other ways we recognize all the layers to the women that in our lives. But it was just interesting to see that even without her physical presence, like how she still managed to have some of that input, and that, you know, her fingerprints were still all over her family. Like they couldn't escape that. And that's something I think it was made more powerful by her actually not being physically on that show and just being in memory to them, because it just, I think, demonstrated the positive influence she has on them and that they think about her. And
he won't let her memory go. You know, how the other people want him to start dating and meeting people, and he's like, no, not me.
Right.
Yeah, you know, and listening and watching to Alicia Lewis and Sulaih Picorelli and your host Ray Collazo talk about Gentefied, which has kind of really captured a lot of people, not just Latinos in particular, the Latino community that's really thirsting for real representation in the media where it comes to these kind of conversations about politics that me and Alicia are engaged in on a daily basis, in her case in California, and me on the East Coast and nationally, or Netflix and just good content, good movies. We're 20% of the movie buyers and less than 5% of the main characters in these feature films. Netflix is trying to help us kind of get the ball forward, and we're really happy that not only this was a Latino cast and a very authentic sort of Latino typical and celebrated Latino community in Boyle Heights, but it was the directors, the producers like America Ferrera and the rest of her team were also from the community. Alicia, the last question I have for you for this first segment of the show is, and I'll share first. I want to know what made Alicia cry, because I know something made you tear during this show, my friend. So Alicia, it wasn't for me. I'll share first. It wasn't like a specific moment or like crescendo or climax or drama. Somewhere in the middle of like episode 5 or episode 6, I just started tearing because it hit me just how it showed how the beauty of our folks. Because there aren't too many not that there's anything wrong with being lighter skinned, but there's like it really like shows like our beauty in like in a real way. And it doesn't whitewash it. It doesn't try to glam it up. It doesn't try to, you know, it's just, there's just a beauty in it. And it's not just the people, the food, the murals, the neighborhood, Boyle Heights. I mean, you know how much love we got for that community out there, you know, and it just kind of made me tear, because I'm like, you know, that grandfather could have been my grandfather. And I grew up with people that look like this. And oh God, Chris, I mean, the nerdy guy in the hood, that's my whole life, you know, and how little has that ever been represented in the mainstream media? So what got you, girl? I know there had to be a moment or two that really got to your soul during Gentefied, Alicia.
Yeah, so I was watching it on a flight, and at one point I literally just started crying while on this airplane. I'm in the middle seat, so God help the two guys who were sitting next to me, complete strangers, probably wondering, what is this woman sobbing about? What got me was the episode with the episode was titled Mariachi, and that's the one that like did me in. And it was watching the father having to he's struggling to find work and still keep his authenticity, but it was about like not letting his son know what he'd gone through, not to spoil it for people, but not trying to let his son know the struggles they're going through financially. And it was sitting at they're sitting there and they're having a discussion, and he's trying to pick what he wants to eat, the little boy is, and the dad's like, just pick whatever you want, we're going to get ordered this time, we're going to order anything we want. And not knowing what was going to happen, that they were not going to have a place to live. And that just hit me to my core, because it's exactly how my dad was. He never told us how broke we were. We didn't know we were poor. And it was even when we didn't have a Christmas tree one year, and I think about it, my dad made it out of Christmas lights on the wall, and we thought we were special. We thought it was like magic for my dad to have done this. We didn't know it was because we have any money. And so when I saw that episode, I mean, it just was so raw. I didn't know my dad didn't pay the bills until I was older. And it's just that respect for preserving your children's like universe and their fantasy for themselves, no matter what is happening. That, I mean, gosh, to give me right now, just thinking about it, love my father. But that right there is what I think strikes the core of what we are as family. And that was just so beautifully done. See, still gets me. It's just right now. Obviously, I was telling you the truth.
No, and then as someone
that is.
I mean, look, you know, people that know me, but a lot of people don't. Full disclosure, like, and me and Alicia were former coworkers. We're still colleagues in the struggle. You know, like, I mean, this is, you know, that mariachi singer, his dream was like my dream, doing this, grinding this out, you know, trying to rush to get the kids to take their showers, finish their homework, and go somewhere where they're safe so I could knock this out, you know, and do this. And it's like so many of us are, and the artists and the dreaming is such a big part of the show. The chef, the artist, the mariachi guy, and then these social forces are like getting in the way and making people make these choices that they don't want to make, you know, because there's a lot of societal forces. So there's a good transition. Alicia, we're going to let you dry off a little bit.
You teared me up.
Sulai's going to transition us into the second segment of the show, found in translation. But you're watching and listening to Alicia Lewis, Sulaih Picorelli. This is real stuff. So Sulaih, let people know how they can continue to support the show, what they're watching, what they're listening to, and then we'll get into the politics and the identity issues of our new favorite Netflix show, Gentefied, on Found in Translation.
All right, so you are watching and listening to Ray Collazo, Sulaih Picorelli, and Alicia on Found in Translation talk show. Ray and our team stack truth, not politics, and today's hottest issues, like the Netflix phenomenon Gentefied. If you're watching live, please leave us a question or a comment on Facebook, Twitter, or YouTube Live. We'll make sure to get to that before the end of the show. So also leave your comments in the box so you can join the show live on webcam. Tell us what's on your mind and show us what you got.
Absolutely. Thank you, Sulaih. And I really appreciate you joining the show. Much respect to our fellow Philadelphia activist community, how we connected. I don't even know how somehow I guess to Ushla Radio. We all connected, and I appreciate you being a fan of the show. And this is what happens, fans. If you're a really good fan, you get to co-host the show. Translation. We're talking about Gentefied with our great friend Alicia Lewis, who we're going to bring back on screen in a second, and Sulaih Picorelli. Gentefied is a story about family, but it also speaks to our identities as both Latinos and Americans. And that's different for everybody. Sulaih, you know, it's, you know, when you think about from the shows you've watched from Gentefied, a lot of not only, you know, kind of like family and memories of your life come up, but a lot of political issues and a lot of identity issues are coming up on the show in a very provocative way that have captured a lot of our attention. Can you hear me? I guess you can. Alicia, talk. Yes, you are. Talk to us. You know, a lot of politics on the show, my friend. A lot of politics. Yeah. Talk to us. You just kick us off. The floor is yours, my friend. What I know that grabbed you because there's some real provocative stuff going on here. On the surface, or right in your face.
I think, Mia, when you start right off of it, it's over literally defending the turf of your neighborhood. I mean, really getting into how are we battling this encroaching, pressure to sell, to have our houses sold for us, our business locations we had no control over in our communities being, put on the market and converted to something where someone else has defined what's best for it. And I mean, that initial, it's very much, I know for California, seeing the gentrification to communities and seeing and layering that in with our housing crisis and the way in which that has kind of unfolded in a lot of our big cities is just such a universal, conversation to be having over where do we step in and preserve communities so that they have their authentic neighborhoods, so they're the people who live there that have made it vibrant are able to stay, but then also to still allow for some modernization for like new, revamping businesses or coming in and like rebuilding a building if it's necessary. But like, how do we do that growth, but in a way that still doesn't push out the folks that live there? And that balance is obviously coming to a head, and it's not worked out well, obviously, throughout California, considering our housing and crisis.
You're gonna lose a congressional seat because your population growth has slowed down quite a bit. People can't afford to live in California, moving south to Texas, to Utah, the upper, Pacific Northwest. Why housing? I mean, Gentefied, right? The pun, housing being the central sort of political issue on the show hits the nail on the head so much because, we do this work around the country, and whether it's in Philadelphia, and I know Sulaih, you work with activists in that space, right? Thinking about kind of the gentrification of North Philly. And it's really hitting not only sort of from an economic perspective, which is a big theme of the show, but it's really hitting our core, like it's our communities. It's our traditional Latino communities, whether it's Boyle Heights in LA, which has had Latinos for, centuries, Western San Antonio and North Philadelphia, where I grew up. So many of these, San Francisco's losing Latino population, as you know, Alicia too well. And so this sort of, before we even get into all the other national and Trump and all these other issues that we're dealing with on a national level, and other local issues, housing is such a core issue because we're losing, it relates back to our identity. Because we're losing our identity if we can't go to the church that we grew up in, and we can't visit the neighborhood anymore because it's been torn down, or we don't feel welcomed in our own neighborhood anymore. So it's real. Sulaih, jump in that conversation, because in Philadelphia, it's woo, I mean, you talk about, it's a street fight to keep our neighborhoods just to be here and exist together.
And it's like Alicia says, you do want, the modernization of the community and, to see things keep up. But then what do families do when they can no longer afford their taxes, for example? And, just like the restaurant in the show where they no longer can afford the rent because the new owners are going to hike. So, it's so difficult. I wish, there was a clear cut, but there isn't. So what do we do?
It's true, because there's a double-edged sword to this whole situation. So and that's kind of the theme of Gentefied, right? Like, there a lot of times the characters are put in a position where, to progress in your personal career or to progress to benefit the family, you have to make these value judgments around how much does that expedite the neighborhood changing. Whether it's, Anna with her mural, whether it's Chris changing the menu, sort of hipsterifying the menu at the restaurant, the taqueria. There's all these sort of like
second episode where they let go of Gio. They were making cuts in the kitchen.
That's right.
It's about making those hard decisions.
That's right.
Too.
And I want to shout out, talk about Philadelphia elements of this. A good friend of the show, business person, retired a police officer, Tony Santiago, who was I forget his exact rank, but very senior in the police force, Philadelphia. When he retired and had a very successful business, he had the kind of neighborhood bar, like the Cheers of the Latino community in North Philly, at Front and Berks for a long time, and he just sold it. I know he sold it for a few bucks. I'm not going to get, I heard figures, I'm not going to get into it, but he's walking away from this deal very good. But my point is that I think he probably held on to it a few years that he really needed to financially, because he wanted to hold on to something in the neighborhood. And he knew, like, once I give up this liquor license, this won't be a Spanish bar anymore. It's gonna promote that, gentrification. So these are hard things. Alicia Lewis, give me another, Alicia, let me ask you this question. I could imagine, to me, it was kind of like old hat and how we talk. But I could imagine an outsider saying, wow, these people don't like white folks. Because there was a lot of that kind of, comments around, the Weddles are coming, the Weddles are coming. And so I think just kind of the real straight up, frank conversation around this feeling of our community being attacked by outsiders and how we express that. I'm sure it was very it was provocative, but real in real life. It's how we.
I think that's I think somebody external who maybe not like have a lot of Latino friends might be like, what the heck? They really talk this way about us. I'm like, oh, yeah, actually, kind of. No, they would have jokes, but yeah. But it really is. It's not. I think in a hostile way. It's like, the humor that kind of was layered with it. Kind of, it's like it's accepting reality and trying to balance that out. Recognizing that our lifestyle might be different, and like, hey, they're gonna come spend their money. Cool. Like, this is what I'm planning to do. I think one of the things that stood out is like, where does choice come into that when you're making a change in your community, whether it's you're choosing to like, paint something specific or whether to change that menu, when you're trying to appeal to the very like population that's causing you harm the more that they show up. And there's this real, like, I think political question over where does community choice, where is it really clicking in that are you acting in your own autonomous way, making a choice as a small business running this, taqueria, that making these changes is good for us? Or is it just because it's just so reactive and it's not a free choice that you're doing to still maintain viability in your community? And there's just like thoughts I had with watching that. I was like, are they really getting to make this free choice on this when it's coming through basically someone's gun, you have a gun to your head. What do you do? And is that a real choice for them or not? If absent those pressures, what would change have looked like for the community? And I often think we don't get that opportunity to ask ourselves that in our communities as we're facing gentrification, as we're facing those pressures. So I'm not sure it's a way to, I don't know if we've ever really been able to kind of like pull that apart and think about like, what would our communities look like if we didn't have the fear of losing everything constantly? What would the modernization look like? What would the growth look like? What would our housing and businesses, shape into? And I don't think we've ever really had that opportunity to see that fully flesh out. But the show got me thinking about those things. I'm like, wow, where's choice come into any of these political decisions that they're making?
Another sort of tearjerker moment was when, I don't know if it was somewhere that when Anna was doing the mural at the liquor store, and it was a Latina who owned the bodega liquor store, basically. And, she didn't like the mural. That's another part of the conversation, right? But she didn't like the mural. And then when Anna tried to make it up by doing this cash bomb thing, you like go on Instagram, everyone go to this place to, buy the chips and Takis and stuff. She didn't like that either, even though that was money for, would have been, Anna was trying to do the right thing. So when Anna came to her and said, the cousin said, the muralist said, look, I'm just trying to help you. This was she goes, you know what? Neither the owner of the building, as it related to the mural you put up, or you about trying to make it up to me, neither one asked me what I wanted or my opinion. And so I thought that was a real good kind of like flip the script around, even when we're well-intentioned with our own community folks, are we listening to them enough? So, and that brings up a lot of different issues. Jump in this conversation, Sulaih. A lot of politics with the discussion around the community changing, how we feel about outsiders from our community. Are we getting listened to, even amongst ourselves? So a lot of interesting stuff going on.
So one thing that I wanted to just quickly point out, in thinking about choice, is that Casimiro, he's running a business in one way, and now, he's got to think of innovative ways of running his business, 2020 ways of running a business, and what kind of marketing am I going to put in place so it's kind of also like that mental shift that needs to occur the patriarch's head, where I can't keep doing things the same way. The same in our Latino community here. If we want our businesses to grow, and there has to be a modernization also of the way that we do business, the way that we market ourselves, the way that we brand ourselves. And
what did you think of when he was doing the cooking, when he was doing that, the menu change, when he was like trying to make a new item?
I'm only a couple of episodes in, but Chris's presence in the show, I think, is, will bring in that 2020 perspective to business, with menu planning, with marketing, with running a successful business. So I think Chris is going to be really exciting.
I think for the grandfather too, it really gets into like how, like, you're never too old to innovate, right? Like, they have something to contribute still. And your points about like him having to rethink all this and really just dig in. I think there's something just to be said about like the value you still have at some point to rethink it, and that you can be part of that even if you're older. And so it's really neat to see, I think, that role kind of just be expanded to where he's not just written off as like too elderly to ever think about his business in a new way, but rather like he gets to be able to be part of this new phase of what he started.
Yes, and that's so special because that shows so much humility on his part. You know how a patriarch Mexican man can be. A mí nadie me ayuda. So it's so special to, and even the other cousin, the one who's been there all along,
JJ,
Eric. Eric, this
I have this down.
No, I know it's JJ. Yeah, and my wife got a little thing for it.
I can't wait to see Eric's transformation in, growing up into, no, we're businessmen. We're gonna bring this in together. I'm gonna be a part of this. Because right now it's, Eric against Chris, and and I see that happen so much in our community, unfortunately, where no, this doesn't mean that you and I are up against each other. We're going to come together and work through this together.
That's right.
Yeah.
So, Alicia, give me a what other sort of issue or political statement do you think the show's making that you wanted to note?
I think that there's so for those who've not watched all the episodes and those who have, like, built a site on it, but there is one where they show a scene from the past and they show a very similar scene in the present. And in the past, you see the TV at some point, they pass it, and it is then President Clinton making statements about public safety. And then later on, same scene, same location, and the TV is back on, and it's Trump saying stuff, and it's still the same thing, and it's a Americans versus them and type of language. And it was, we thinking about that and for where we have been as a community on whether we're really being served by one party so much more than another, and like that dynamic over where there may be not always a lot of differences, and how our community has struggled under both parties in different ways, obviously in way different conversations in the ways that they were, but it was just something I noticed
on the translation.
But I think it was worth noting to see like the way in which like public safety and the way in which it absolutely has decimated our communities under Democrats was striking, especially during the 90s when we saw during the Clinton years and the tough on crime and what that did for mass incarceration. And that was just, I thought was just something that's like somebody just added that in. I was like, very good point. I mean, obviously, if we get in other topics, huge differences between the parties, clearly. But I think when it came to a reminder of the parties Democrats have not been as woke on certain topics and certain people for as long as people like to think that they have been. And I think that was a really good point to have highlighted very lightly.
Yeah, and what was good about kind of a lot of the issues that normally are associated with Latinos in the inner city, and whether it's Narcos or, Blood In, Blood Out back in the days, or American Me, or, thinking about like immigration content, I guess at its best, and Sulaih's too young for this, but and you are too, Alicia, but Norte when I was a little kid, and some of the better stuff, but that, issues that are so normally dominate the perspective of what people see as Latinos, drug dealers, kids caught up in the criminal justice system, the immigrant that's in a jam. It's part of our community. It's part of the story, but they didn't let it dominate, and it didn't like stereotype what we are. It's a factor. It's something we have to navigate through, but we also have to navigate through like, small, using our car as collateral, or just trying to figure out other ways to get things done. So, Sulaih, set us up for the next segment, because on the last segment, which is of this episode of Found in Translation, we really appreciate all of our listeners, and of course, my guest host, the Sulaih Picorelli, who I didn't know exactly how to pronounce her name until a second ago before the show started, and Alicia Lewis, joining us from the Sacramento area. That this, hey, we've talked a lot about politics. There'll be other times, and obviously, we all want us to be clean. And this coronavirus is all the conversation. I have a feeling we're all going to be communicating. This is going to be the vanguard for the way business is done for some time. But we wanted to smile, and we wanted to celebrate our community, celebrate art on this episode. And this show, Gentefied, the story of three cousins in Boyle Heights, which is a celebrated community in East LA in California, in the Los Angeles areas, really brought a smile to our face. And the show's really gotten it. Executive producer, America Ferrera. Sulaih, set us up for the last segment of Found in Translation.
Absolutely. I just want to remind everyone that you can subscribe to Found in Translation talk show anywhere you can get, you download your podcast, iTunes, Stitcher, Radio Public, Pandora, Spotify, or YouTube. And if you have a moment, and you really love the content that we're putting out, if you're able to, go up on there and give us your review and help us spread the message of Ray and his amazing team of commentators. So you can also subscribe to our YouTube channel at Ray's Latino Talk on YouTube, and listen to Found in Translation on WPPM 106.5 FM Philadelphia on Tuesdays at 11 a.m.
Before we bring Alicia Lewis back on screen, Sulaih, how is your first episode going of Found in Translation? I'm very curious.
Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate the opportunity. You can tell I'm a little frozen.
Let it go. Let it go.
But it's so fun. And I'm so excited to meet you, Alicia. Thank you so much. And I really, really do mean, when I said about just so much nostalgia coming back, because I love the Mexican community so much, living in Wisconsin as a little girl, grew up just immersed in the culture. So this awesome. Has been really exciting.
No, we appreciate you joining the show. And on the last segment of the show here with great friends, Sulaih Picorelli and Alicia Lewis, we got to talk about relationships, because this show was hot. It's hot and heavy on the relationships on many levels. So, Alicia, the floor is yours, my friend. A lot going on. Can we talk about the quintessential Latino romance between the baby's daddy, who everyone's kind of rooting for to get it together, and the Latina queen who's got it all together? But
Lydia's fantastic, right?
Not just like Lydia
got it all.
And her man, the one I know, the one all your ladies are rooting for. We're all rooting for the brother, but it brings up a whole lot of issues and dynamics in our community.
Yeah, I think it's, Lydia, I think, really embodies, not only is she just badass, flat out, but just, with the amount of like accomplishments we've watched Latinas do in the rise of like higher education and those accomplishments, and the amount of, seats we're taking up in universities, and it is phenomenal to see that growth from our women. But balancing that at times too, we have obviously a lot of our men are doing fantastic accomplishments as well, but to see that rise and that kind of that struggle about, here's your sweetheart from, back home, and balancing out those goals and the shifted experiences when she's gone away to college and she's, has these other career goals, and how do you balance that out with still that pull to want to be home? I grew up in the Central Valley, and when I got my college degree, we moved to Sacramento, and it was far from my family. That was so unusual. So seeing someone like her having to balance that out while still, and then she's pregnant and she's still trying to, reunite this, like keep this family unit together. It was real to see, and those tough choices that go along with it about your career versus your man. Like, what do you do? And she was a good character to be making that choice.
No, and Eric's character, her love interest was one of the cousins. You know, I'm sure they'll get more into these details in other episodes. They alluded to it in one of the first episodes but I'm sure we'll find more about this background in the second season. But he's portrayed as sort of like someone that's kind of gone through his ups and downs, and you know, kind of other side of the tracks when he got in trouble, and even amongst his family who loves him, he's perceived as someone that's kind of not got it together, and so it really puts a face to families being together, and it's not just about, you know, Black Latino men not being responsible. It's about not feeling like they're worthy sometimes of their partner to be like a real partner. And so his struggle to try to get there, and he's still not there yet, even as this first season wraps up, but he's trying. I thought it was really touching, and I thought it kind of hit the nail on the head on how the real deal happens, and to the point of Lydia on the show, you can't blame her for being skeptical. And really, and sort
Lydia
of
shows up for Eric.
Is this really going to work? Is he really going to be able to match to keep up with me? So I see y'all ladies shaking your heads. Jump in here. Talk to us, ladies.
She's believing in him. Like, that's the thing. I think you see her through and through. She's telling him, like, you got this. You can do this. But, like, bro, you're going to stand up and do this now. Here's the path. And I think that challenge from her is, you know, like fuel to his fire. Like, he has it there. And I think it's when you hear that his family kind of like knocking on him a bit, like, that's why you have to have a business partner. You have to have these other things. You know, you can't make these sole decisions yourself. And that's kind of chipping away, I think, at his confidence to be able to do those things. And then he has this woman who's like, hell no, you can do it. And seeing that happen. And then you find out how flippin' smart he is. And you're just like, oh, you're not just this guy, but rather you're just like thoughtful person for your community. And you have this whole, like, you know, soft, you know, tender side to you.
Spoiler, Alicia.
Sorry.
That's
going to tell when you see him.
It's going to be exciting to see because Lydia shows up for that family a lot, and her father too.
Well, in the opener, right? He's like riding up with, you know, and it's do you have the 7 love languages, whatever. That book. I mean, they labeled him right there, like rough on the outside, total tender on the inside, and that was done. Like, first scene. And so I know you saw that part. So that was
he was so upset it wasn't available.
You know, and you're watching and listening to Alicia Lewis and Sulaih Picorelli talk about the phenomenon of Gentefied. And if you haven't watched it or watched the whole first season, watch it. Got some great comments in the chat. A very good friend of the show, Leo Perales, who's our Washington State correspondent. Alicia keeps us up with the politics in the Apple State. Had a big. Are they finished counting votes in Washington State, Leo? Maybe they'll beat California. You had a head start, Alicia. But anyhow, Leo.
A lot of people.
Yeah, that's true. You have
Can we read out what Leo says?
Yeah, why don't you read that for us, Sulaih?
Sure. So Leo Perales says, Gentefied is a watershed moment for Latinx on TV. Netflix is doing it big to highlight our struggles and triumphs. Their humanizing is in an era that look at us as the other. Very cool. Very cool.
You know, speaking of people that are usually cast aside as the other, Anna's relationship with her partner is almost, it comes up, but one of the beauties of the show is the way it's depicted. It's almost like you don't think about it. It really, I thought it painted it in a very almost boring way, in a sense, even though those two are all over each other. I don't know a couple that affectionate. Do you know a couple, Alicia, that affectionate? I mean, those two.
Well, no, you know, we've been married a long time, but, you know, I think we probably can still, like, bother people when we're around them. So,
all right, good for you. God bless you, girl. But talk to us about Anna and her partner's relationship. I think very significant on a lot of levels.
Huge to have, I think, just to represent the LGBTQ community, like, in general, because that is something, like, I think as we need to have that conversation. We know that it's been terrible for our family members and our friends who have, you know, come out, and we know how the bullying and those things and the shame that has associated with it. So to see something where it's like it's just a known fact, accepted relationship was, I think, a real testament to where the writers and directors were really trying to demonstrate that there is this ability within the community to be open and loving about, having someone gay in the family, and having that there was, I think, really telling of just how far we have come as a community. Because I mean, that wasn't the case when I was younger, and seeing that play out with family members, but just seeing where things are now and seeing where my brother is with, the relationship with the family has dramatically changed. And he teaches, queer studies.
I'm at Alicia. What's up with the mom? It's like the person that should be the most supportive, like my safety net. It's so hard. So hard.
I think with the mom though too, like we're seeing, like we learn so much about her as it goes along, and why she's so, like, I think, hardened, on her exterior and how she carries herself.
Yes.
But then we really find like what having, exploited labor can do to you, and being fully depended on by your children in a way without a partner around, from what we can see. So we need to know the rest of these family dynamics, but to see that play out with that the mom not knowing how to, she wasn't like aggressive about their relationship. She just wasn't warm about their relationship. But the rest of the family seemed to be, I think, just kind of neutral. We're just like, oh, that's just who Anna's with. And I think that was a good one. But then the art mixed in with how she was expressing herself was a really tough, because it was interesting to see. It was okay that she has a lesbian relationship, but then when we talk about men having their relationships, like that difference of acceptance, I think was very honest, and for the way I've seen like the community play out in my family.
Yeah, and what was interesting was that even beyond kind of like the her sexuality, I think part of the dynamic with her mother was not so much an acceptance, but not having an understanding. She was pushing back on the fact her daughter thought she had options in life. And so it's like, kind of this generational shift in thinking, like, immigrant woman, you just got to put your head down, take care of the family, and you're not going to be able to do really what you want. I mean, there's a scene, and, Sulaih, it is a spoiler show. It is what it is. There's a scene where she doesn't even feel worthy of going to get that pastry at the shop, just because she doesn't feel like, as a poor woman in this society, she has choices. And she's seeing this daughter that feels like she all kind of choices, who she can love, what she can do to make a living. Because I think she even says I think there's even a line where her mother says, like, what, you think you can like make a career doing what you love? And her daughter's like, I am making a career doing
Absolutely.
my love. I'm making money. I'm about to make more money. So there's a whole lot going on there. The Sulaih, anything else about the relationships on the show? The romantic relationships that you wanted to share on this episode of Found Translation?
I think it's so funny that Ray calls the Anna and her girlfriend's relationship kind of boring. So that there must be others expecting, listen, these relationships, they're all the same. It doesn't matter if it's a boy and a girl and a girl, or a guy and a guy. My husband and I, we don't sit around, we don't walk around making out in front of our people. But it's just really interesting how that Ray, pointing that out.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's interesting. Casimiro, Alicia. What's the wannabe girlfriend, La Curandera Lupe?
Oh yeah.
Oh,
Talkative characters on the show. I love that lady. There's a lady like that in every. See, that's what I love about this show. Everybody on, I don't care. And the thing is, the other thing too, we don't have time to delve into it so much, but
very telenovela.
Oh, very telenovela. But the thing is, that to me was an example of, like, so relatable. You didn't have to be Mexican American to connect with that. There's a Puerto Rican or a Dominican, it looks like that, got a store like that, whether it's she's a tarot card reader, or got a botanica, or whatever you want to call it, or has a beauty salon that has that kind of intrigue, that engaging personality. And she's going for her man, and she's coaching him through almost like the transition process or grief process of losing his loved one.
She's a very feminine vibe to her, right? She's just like that very just like, I am woman in here, we're dating, and this, it's just like, this was a date. This is just like, we're going, you talk about vacation and those things, and just that flow from her. I'm like, God, I'm like, you're just so calming. And her presence was just very centered. And I think that was a refreshing relationship dynamic to put into all the young love that's happening all over the place, where it's a little bit more chaos between everybody. And you can see that, right? And just seeing that, like, God, you're like, oh, at some point it's gonna get chill. Oh, thank God. And but seeing that play out, I think is really beautiful, because to say that you can find this, and that for people who have been widowed, and to say that there is a whole life there that exists, I mean, that's just, I think, really cool to put on TV, and to see them having like this like sexiness to them. It's really, that was funny. My grandmother, she dates, and to see that, I'm always cracked. Oh my God, she might be that woman. I know, I think about it. Oh my God.
Totally.
But to see that play out, I'm like, heck yeah, go get that. Like, you're not dead yet. So
grandparents that I grew up with in Philadelphia, Ellen and Lydia Collazo, were legendary, good-looking hip people. And so I would run into old timers that grew up with them in Puerto Rico throughout my organizing life in the region. And they would talk about, oh, your grandfather was so good looking, or your grandmother was so good looking. And they were like the real good looking people in our community. And they still had it. I remember being a little kid, and I would walk to their house after school, and I called them a couple times, and just like, our, so, but just like that generational, like, again, that stereotype, not just as Latinos, but, just like, hey, we're still human beings. We still have passions. We still have a lot going on. So
we still feel.
Absolutely. So as we start wrapping up this edition of this love letter to Gentefied, Sulaih, tell us something else about the show that you wanted to note, and why you're enjoying it so much, and what you're looking to enjoy, because you just started this journey, my friend. There's a lot more you're going to learn about. It's going to be a lot of fun for you.
Look, I just can't wait to see where the family takes this business. That's what like, I want them to forget about the noise. Grandpa needs to stop going to jail, getting in trouble in the community. It's like all of this other noise stuff has to stop, so that we actually start seeing people come together and work to make this taqueria all that it can be. Absolutely.
I want to read. I had there's people that weren't able to come on the show, but they wanted to contribute to the show. So the first thing I wanted to share with people, a great friend to the show. I don't know, Alicia, I don't think you've met him, but a very good friend of mine is actually one of the community leaders in Boyle Heights, a Cubano. Talk about the diversity piece. We didn't even get
really?
Yeah.
Nice.
The only Cubans he grew up with were his parents. And in Boyle Heights, great guy. He actually founded the Pee Wee Football League in the neighborhood many years ago. Still a great friend, still a great advocate, and lives in Boyle Heights, right in the hood. I said, Nisam, share a couple things you want me to share about your community. First generation immigrants that love this country and believe in the American dream. That's what Boyle Heights is all about. A place you feel eternally proud of being from here. You can enjoy who you are culturally and still be an American. And then Adan Maidena, who is a local, you know him, Sulaih, is a local minister, and then this is not popping up. But anyway, he talked about how basically he's cried in every episode because we grew up in El Paso, Texas, and this attempt for people to make us invisible. And obviously there's some allusions to some of the political stuff around immigration that you're going to find out later in the show, Sulaih, in your journey on the show, or particularly pointing it to him. And he works with young people in Philadelphia that are in this process of being gentrified out of their community. So a lot of these issues are resonating with our folks, again, regardless of ethnicity or regardless of what region of the country. Alicia Lewis, what else do people, what else is important about Gentefied you wanted to share with our Found in Translation community?
I think the big one is going to be that's kind of the standout one, was the protesting. And how do we as activists
in that show?
How do we as activists stand up and like protest what's happening, but when it's involving choices by people in our community to be part of the change? And doing that, does picketing and protesting outside the taqueria really accomplish something? Who are you hurting? And so as somebody who does advocacy and is out there and talks, with folks who are doing grassroots organizing, what's the appropriate way to do it, and what's that line look like? It's very challenging, because at the same time you want to be heard, you want to do this, but how do you balance it with a business owner who lives next door to you and who you grew up going into their shop? And so those questions, I think, are going to be, I'm hoping to see in the second season, on like how that plays out in terms of those advocates from the community and where they find their voice for change, but also how do we see this family survive the situation of gentrification?
There's so many, and it really speaks to how good the show is, because you want the second season as soon as possible, because you not only want to know more about these characters, but you want to know about these fringe characters. Mags, I believe, is the third girlfriend in the activist crew, that has a couple real good moments. I mean, she's woke and she knows her stuff, and she really represents kind of for this new generation of leadership in a very interesting way. I hope the mariachi guy comes back. I know he's in Bakersfield right now, but I hope he comes back. And there's just so many of these side characters, the Dominican, I don't have her name in front of me on the show, but Miss Calderon is the name of the actress, but Julissa Calderon is the actress, but her character's family comes up very briefly. I want to know more about these people. How did these Dominicans get to the West Coast? It feels very natural. It doesn't feel random, but it's, there's issues of colorism and race and diversity that we could go. There's all kind of content there that needs to be explored. So there's just so much. They haven't even gotten out of the neighborhood, and where does the art piece come into play? And there's just so much to it. What else are you looking, Alicia, what else do you want to see in the next season? I know we can't, what else are you looking to see in season 2?
I think we're going to have some broader questions over the impact of ICE enforcement. So great question on that front.
No doubt.
And I think also about seeing where, I think that's going to be the big one. That's my big cliffhanger, is it's going to be all around centered on the ICE enforcement component.
And does my man go to Stanford? That's the big question.
Oh.
That relationship to me, I think, is just so, it really captures so many dynamics in our community. Sulaih, before we wrap this up, let people know how they can support the show, because I know y'all love the show. I get, what's so funny? I'm going to call out my people, and I'm saying this lovingly. The people that like to get extra when I'm not doing the show, they DM me on Facebook. They DM me.
Oh, yeah?
Huh. Oh, yeah. Like to get inside information. Oh, what's happening with this election? What's going to happen with Bernie? Who's going to be the VP? I know you know things. I'm like, you know what? You need to support the show. So, and I give y'all all that information, no problem. I got my spies. I got my birds all over the place giving me information, which I share on the show, and leadership like Alicia Lewis and Sulaih Picorelli that provide really important stuff and really feedback. But Sulaih, let people know how they can support the show, because I don't ask for much, y'all, but I need help. To promote the profile of the show so more people can get this information and be part of these conversations.
So I just want to remind everyone that the Found in Translation family, like Ray said, we need your help spreading our message. So if you're able to share with your friends, to share it the live stream on Thursdays from 8 to 9 Eastern time, 5 to 6 Pacific. Subscribe to the podcast and make sure you follow us on social media. Our handle is FIT_talk show. Ray gets the top. What are you bringing us?
When I get to the top, girl, y'all come with me.
Where are you taking us?
I go Kevin Hart style, and I really mean that. We want to support all of our endeavors, whether it's nonprofit organizations, businesses. We really want this to be a real. This is a family affair, no question about it. Alicia Lewis, thank you so much for joining the show. Of course, people that are listening to this can understand that they can keep following Alicia Lewis on social media at So Say Alicia. I love that handle, girl.
So says Alicia.
So say Alicia. Any projects or campaigns you're working on you wanted to shout out real quick, or anything on your mind? No more Sacramento for a while. A lot going on.
I know I'm stuck in Sacramento. No, we're doing child support reform and economic justice reform in terms of consumer protection. So when you're seeing people going out and getting those, bail bondsmen and those crazy loans and all those other things, that's the type of regulations that we're working on. So
Alicia,
good
you
stuff.
got work, my friend. Anything, everybody who come on the show and support,
Yeah.
you just let us know. We'll support you 100%. Sulaih, your first time
So
on the
I'm
show.
always tweeting on it. So
Talk to us,
Awesome.
Sulaih. Anything else you wanted to share on the show? Shout outs, or I know you want to make sure everyone washes their hand. A lot of Purell in the household, I'm sure. Anything else you wanted to share before we wrap it up?
Listen, everyone, please keep safe. Wash your hands. And I hate to say this, but we need to
Washes their hands.
Practice social distancing. The kids already have no school tomorrow. Did you know that, Ray?
Yes.
And the supermarkets.
Home tomorrow, we'll see. Yeah.
Supermarkets are empty. My husband just came home from the supermarket. He says, todo estaba abarrotado. Las góndolas vacías.
Everyone, all seriousness, be safe.
Yes.
Who you gotta listen to, who you don't. You should just not believe anything they say. We all know what's going on here, and we have to protect each other. And the sad part of this whole situation is that we really don't know the whole situation, and that's what's causing this panic. That's what's causing, what seems like drastic measures. But we have to be safe than sorry. I know I had to cancel some business trips, and all of us are having to make some difficult decisions. But the most important thing, besides safety, is for people like me and Alicia, you, Sulaih, that are a little more privileged to have a little more flexibility. Not that it's going to be easy. But we have a lot of people out there that are working at Walmarts, that are working bar backs at restaurants, that they don't have paid sick leave. They don't have time off. They can't work from home. So we have to do what we can to advocate for those people so that they can have an equitable way to deal with this crisis the way many of us have the fortunate to do. Thank you so much, Alicia Lewis. Thank you so much,
Alicia
Picorelli. And keep watching Gentefied. Keep supporting the show. Let Netflix know we need season 2 as soon as possible. And thank you all so much, as always, for joining the Found in Translation Talk Show. Support the movement. Have a wonderful weekend.